Good evening. Thank you all for coming here. My name is Caleb Beelan, and I don't want to take up too much of your valuable time, so let's get started. I have a short clip I want to show you.
You smell that? What is that?
What?
What's that smell?
A cologne?
No.
Opportunity.
No. Money.
Oh, okay.
I smell money.
Okay.
Chris?
I thank you all for that. Like Ryan Gosling's assistant in The Big Short, one of my favorite movies, I smell a great opportunity. And there is money involved, but this is more of an opportunity. At DTE, we have an extraordinary chance to affect Michigan's carbon emissions. Potential outcomes of this proposal. We may allow Fermi to utilize thorium resources on Earth, whether through thorium hybrid fuels or just pure thorium fuels. Thorium is considered abundant on Earth's crust. However, thorium does need enrichment and research and innovation in that industry, but we can talk about that in a little bit. A big long-term benefit of using thorium is we would potentially reduce the cost of defueling Fermi significantly, and also reduce the cost of storage of spent fuel by generating a lot less. And we would also just be generating good research data for the nuclear community as a whole. So what are some of the issues facing our growing energy problem? In a word, longevity. Carbon emissions are a huge threat to our environment. Most people shouldn't have to worry about this threat, but as an energy company, we should. Main advantage of fossil fuels is they are short-term cheap, and they are well developed. Wind and solar provide clean energy, however, panels and turbines need replacing, and there are signs of negative effects on local wildlife already. Nuclear is a long-term energy source that needs further development as it provides zero carbon emissions and has minimal effect on local wildlife. Uranium-235 is our current primary source of nuclear fuel. It currently produces a significant amount of radioactive byproducts. This is one of the main problems with nuclear power, is we don't exactly know how to fully reprocess all of the spent fuel. Uranium-235 is also well innovated and cheaper to produce and enrich, as uranium oxides are naturally occurring on Earth's crust. And we've spent the last 60 years innovating the enrichment process of uranium fuels. Thorium fuels, however, are showing extremely promising results in testing, as we'll see shortly. Let's talk about Fermi. Fermi 2 reached criticality in 1963, as most of you probably know, and has been in operation since. The biggest disadvantage of a boiling water reactor, like Fermi, is the trace amounts of radioactive materials found in the steam. These materials pose a long-term exposure risk to anyone working near the steam generators. Boiling water reactors also use uranium-235, which becomes a long-term expense for a variety of reasons. Those reasons include storage, which property is only getting more and more expensive, and then also, also reprocessing of all of that spent fuel. The other main disadvantage of uranium-235 is weapons proliferation. I will talk about that in just a little bit, though. My solution, my proposal, the reason I brought you here is I propose we conduct an academic study on using various forms of thorium fuels. The studies listed here were conducted on different reactors around the world. One in Kuwait, rather published in Kuwait, but tested on a Chinese reactor. One published in India, sorry. One was published in India, also tested on a different Chinese reactor, and one tested on a Belgian reactor. German, not Belgian. Published in Belgium, yes. The first study here listed tested a thorium oxide fuel mixed with uranium. The second study specified specifically the levels of thorium and uranium used in the fuel at 40% thorium and 60% uranium on specifically a high temperature gas reactor, specifically a pebble bed reactor. And then the third study tested carbon-coated thorium particles. That was a pure thorium fuel that was coated in about a 6 mm carbon coating that helped maintain stability. The study showed that using different thorium fuels in 3 different reactor scenarios around the world all provided extremely useful data and arguments for the development of thorium enrichment on Earth's crust so that we can start utilizing this secondary fuel source. So, main benefits. Thorium is theoretically abundant on Earth's crust. I say theoretically because it has to do with the half-lives of different materials we've already found on Earth. However, we do need further innovation to solve reprocessing concerns. As I said earlier, uranium oxide is currently found in specific deposits of uranium oxide on Earth. We have not found nearly as many thorium oxide deposits, but we have found unenriched forms of thorium that, and don't get me wrong, the uranium oxides we found are just in a purer state. And so, the thorium that we have found is usually found in things like seawater and found as a byproduct of mining coal and iron and other non-rare earth metals. But it is there, and we can use it. There are several factors that determine the effectiveness of a fissile reaction. The main ones that these studies focused on as the benefits of using the thoriated fuels, the first one talked about a lower delayed neutron fraction, which allows which produces less transuranic byproducts. That actually ties with the final point you see here. Transuranic byproducts are every element above uranium, as most of you already know. These products are dangerous. I'll talk about them in the next slide. And then the other thing they talked about, specifically the study conducted by Zuhair, notice the fuel temperature coefficient of reactivity was much greater, much more negative was the metric they found, which allowed a much more stable reaction, a lot safer. These factors combined, they found that they were producing less waste and also able to maintain better stability in the reactions, allowing, one of them proposed this is extremely, I believe it was Zuhair, proposed that this is extremely vital information for creating small commercial reactors for rural environments, which can be extremely beneficial in places that aren't at risk of natural disasters. I digress. H. Jackson Brown, Jr., is famously quoted as, "Nothing is more expensive than a missed opportunity." All elements above uranium are unstable and go through radioactive decay, but I would say my biggest selling point for the use of thorium is the fact that it does produce significantly less, the thorium fuel cycle produces significantly less plutonium-239. Plutonium-239 is extremely volatile and used in the making of weapons of mass destruction. Proliferation concerns are probably the best argument against nuclear power, and thorium fuels give off far less of these harmful materials, thus creating much lower supply of this extremely dangerous material on Earth in general. In conclusion, we would have less weapons, less waste, less storage, and less problems. Thank you for your time.